Hi, I'm Tracy Kerrins. I am an EVP Group CIO of Enterprise Functions Technology at Wells Fargo.
Tracy, thanks so much for finding time and joining us on the Abby podcast on this Friday afternoon. Can you tell us a little bit more about your backgrounds, maybe kind of career timeline overview? That would be great to hear.
Sure. Hopefully as exciting as it has felt to me through the years, but I actually started off, I have an engineering degree from University of Michigan, came from a long line of engineers, my dad, grandfather, et cetera. So I was encouraged early on to get interested in coding and technology overall, and kind of carried the torch forward with some family history there. And coming out, I got a degree in industrial and operations engineering. And I was very lucky out of college to work. I went to PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Big Five consulting was big at the time. But I was very lucky because I got to actually code for many years, probably the first 7 or 8 years of my career. At the time, we were doing a lot of custom application development at a variety of companies. I started off working in the utilities industry, so I was doing a lot of app development for gas and electric companies, which at the time, I didn't really appreciate how exciting that can be and really the potential for change. So what I was learning was not just coding and different technologies. I mean, I started off in Power Builder and did Cold Fusion and Siebel, but it was really learning to take kind of legacy outdated business processes and use technology to really transform those and thereby the business. And that's been something that really excited me early on that I've carried through my career and is now a really critical part of my job day to day as well.
Well, that's super exciting, and it seems like a very diverse background. And it's also, I want to dive a little bit deeper into kind of the transition from the consultancy and then going into more of a corporate world, so to say, and then moving up the ranks from that perspective. But before we do that, can you share a little bit more around your current role, what falls under your purview and area of responsibility?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the CIO for Enterprise Functions, and what that entails, it's really all the technology that runs the company, runs Wells Fargo for our employees. So that's HR, finance, risk, marketing, legal, audit, data for the company. That includes all your payroll, benefits, everything, that really runs the company for our employees day to day. So often underappreciated in a way, because when it works, it seems like, just very baseline things that we should have. But if it doesn't work, obviously people get very upset. But for me, that's the exciting part, right? Like high risk, high reward, being able to really, kind of think strategically. And to the point around what else am I responsible for? So in addition to that technology, I align to the corresponding business leaders for each of those spaces. And at Wells Fargo, it's a really exciting time right now because across each of those business verticals, being like HR, risk, finance, we are in the middle of doing an end-to-end business and technology transformation. So to my earlier point, we have the opportunity right now working with our business partners and saying, how can we do this better? So technology is an enabler. Obviously, we bring a lot of technology ideas to the table, but it's also really about how do we streamline and simplify the business process and then use technology to really amplify that. And I get to do that in a lot of different areas right now in my role. So I'm having a really good time, as you can imagine. If you're kind of an adrenaline junkie, this is the place to be, which for me, is very well suited.
Wow, that's super exciting. It seems like, you're wearing a lot of different hats
Yep.
and overseeing a lot of different, spectrums of such a large organization, which leads me to a further point that I want to discuss with you is around building and fostering a culture of innovation within the organization. But first things first, in terms of some of the trends and ideas that really excite you these days, whether from transformation initiative perspectives that you're leading or from personal standpoint, something that you're researching on your own, share with us any insights or ideas that are super exciting to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in the world. We all know this, right? So obviously artificial intelligence to me, I hesitate to even say it's a trend because I feel like we are full blown into it. But what excites me is I think we've just barely begun to tap into its full potential. And so I, am a big proponent of AI and usage of AI, but also in watching where and how it can be used and also the concept of using it responsibly, right? Like, the logic built in there and ensuring there's no bias, et cetera, is very top of mind. I'm fascinated with autonomous driving. I think that could really change the way we interact as humans in the world. Like I think about, financial services. If I can better or change my commute time day to day, what will I do with that time? I'm watching the road, but I don't have to. Could I bank? Could I buy? As a busy working mom, I'm always looking for every minute in the day and how to free that up. And financial services, along with all the other things I do in my life, are part of that. So I look at how will that change the way people, just get around and use their time. And then I also have been just captivated this past year, as I'm sure many, with biotech. I know very little about it. I researched some of the vaccines and the technology and the way the world really came together. And I'm fascinated by that. I think we've made tremendous progress probably in the last year, kind of working together across the entire world, as I mentioned. So I'm watching that just with interest, personal interest. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, wow, that's super exciting, and I
Mhm.
couldn't agree more with you. Especially interesting aspect on the self-driving technologies. I recently spent time talking to an executive who they're actually building lidar technologies that that are building the algorithms and essentially software that takes into account a lot of the human behavior when
Mhm.
making decisions. So, which is very interesting and very fascinating at the same time. It seems so futuristic, yet very close to where we are these days.
Yep, exactly.
Um, I have a very loaded question, but I want to get your perspective on just the overall strategy around building and fostering a culture of innovation within your organization or on
Mhm.
your teams or within your verticals. What are some of the things, in terms of practical strategies or recommendations that really help you do that on a continuous basis, or maybe some things where you had failed and learned something from that particular experience? Share with us anything that really helps you do that.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly haven't cracked the nut on this. I don't think anyone really has, but I'm less of a fan of having, huge dedicated innovation, teams. In my, our business, my world, what usually becomes the best innovation ideas are leveraging current technologies or even cutting bleeding edge technologies, but with existing technology to create new business processes, right? Enhancements to customer and client experience in different ways. So that's what I focus most on. And to do that, I mean, obviously, I need to keep a close eye on, all innovative technologies out there. We all do as technologists. So I don't mean to diminish that in the way, but it's more to me about watching those and then looking at how they could be used in different ways or, in alignment with our business and always with customer and client in mind. So to do that, I think you just have to have a culture where people are free to bring ideas, even if they're completely out of the box. This is where I go to diversity of teams. Everybody's experience in their day-to-day life and world, right, should bring ideas into your workspace where they say, I saw this, or what about this? And being free to bring those ideas and then free to try them. So what I do, if it's good, I'm like, hey, that sounds cool. Why don't you go and mess around with that, pilot it, come back, right? Fails, that's okay. But like we took a look, right? If it looks like it has legs, then let's go and start talking to more people about it, right? Like pull, business partners in, start to, then the ideas really start to build, right? But you want to, poke around at them a little bit and give them the room and space to do that. They don't often have the time to do it, but I find people are really passionate about their ideas. So they bring something to the table and they're very willing to do that on the side or at night because it's something they're really excited about. And if someone's really excited about it, then that's usually the best way to get momentum. So,
I love those examples, and I hear
mhm,
that a lot from other organizations trying to do that. Yeah, we're all about ideas, but at the end of the day, everyone's full of ideas. But when it comes to actual execution, it's a completely different story. And I
yep,
love the analogy that you were making in terms of, yes, it's a personal passion of yours that you are in fact bringing that idea to me, and for you to be able to recognize that energy, that passion, and give them the autonomy to run with that, run an experiment, because at the end of the day, it's not really a failure, it's an experiment. It's
yep,
for us to learn something from that and see if it has the legs to take this further. So
yep,
those are great examples. There's one book that really comes to mind. I always recommend it to everyone. It's a book by a former Harvard professor of mine. He wrote two books on experimentation matters and experimentation works,
mhm,
and covers a lot of the examples like that, which is specific to what exactly you're talking about. So
mhm,
thank you for that
yep.
example. Um, on the other spectrum of kind of the innovation and just building, looking into that future of work, I spend a lot of time talking to other executives at different organizations. And one question that's very, or topic that's very prevalent these days
Mhm.
is, how are you designing your organization or your teams, and how are you preparing for that next period as coming out through, pandemic and the hybrid workplace? Share with us any thoughts that you may have, what's to come, how are you preparing, or some of the things that may be working for you when it comes to that future of work.
Yeah, well, I mean, when it comes to, we're heavily remote right now, as most companies still are. When we look post pandemic, Wells Fargo has come out and said we're going to start bringing people back September timeframe after Labor Day. We do still feel there's value in people being able to collaborate and interact personally in the office, and so we're looking to do that. Still trying to decide what that kind of new normal or normal operating mode will look like, but we are going to go back to the office later in the fall and still drive that in-person collaboration, but with flexibility. We're trying to determine what that flexibility looks like and means. But I think for technology, I mean, in many companies, we've proved that we can work very effectively, many of us remotely. And so we're not taking that for granted, right? We're building that into what what flexible looks like, and what it looks like for technologists too, like me or my team, et cetera. I do want to touch on, so that is super top of mind, but always thinking about, in my role, I think about future of work, right? And that's where I'm always looking at what does that look like, how we collaborate. So it's similar themes to what we're talking about, but I look a lot at I have three daughters, and two of them are, I have twin 14-year-olds and an 11-year-old, and I am constantly watching them and how they communicate with each other, with their peers, how they get information. And to me, that's what I'm always keeping on top of when I think of future of work. Right? You were talking about innovation earlier. But that's really, I have to look. I think we all have to look 5, 10 years down the road when my daughters are entering the workplace, and what will they expect? What will they need? How do we build technology organizations and teams that support, well, first, that are a tech destination they want to work in, and what do we need to enable to be desirable for them? Like, what do we have to have available? And just the way they don't talk to each other, right? They text, they look for videos and input of information and how to so differently. That's what I'm always thinking about with future of work. I guess to me, it's future of work, and whatever that means, 10 years down the line.
Right, absolutely. And I love, leveraging, I guess, the resources that you have at your disposal, immediately, and taking into account how, like the example you've made on your daughters, how they interact, how they consume information. I think that's super important to get some insights on how that future of work will actually look like. So that's, we can probably spend entire episode talking about this. So when, as an executive within your organization, being in charge of technology division, I'm pretty sure that surrounding yourself with the top talent, A players, is at the top of your mind 24/7, whether you are actively recruiting or not. Share with us few strategies that really work for you to accomplish that, and more specifically, candidates that interview with you, they probably go through multiple rounds of assessments, other interviews, panel interviews, and so forth. When they get to Tracy, as much as that you can share with us, what does the interview with you look like? And more importantly, what do you look for in some of the responses when you talk to prospective candidates?
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's a positive experience, right? Out of the gate, hopefully, by the time they get to me, right, to use those words, hopefully they come out, feeling like it was a good use of their time and they learned something just like me. But honestly, I start with, I ask people to tell me a little bit about themselves. Talk to me about your background. Give me some highlights quickly. What I'm looking for is their ability to give information, but at the right level, kind of summarize important points. I'm also looking for how they describe themselves, their team, the role they played in things. Are they a team player? Is there a lot of eyes? Like, I'm looking for the role they played, but just very casually, like letting them, kind of speak and tell their story. But out of that, I look for those nuggets. And then, I mean, the hardest part about interviewing, what I'm really looking for is how can I determine if this person is really good at execution, strategy and innovation. Everyone says they are, and their resumes are going to tell me they are. But how do I really determine that before they're on the team, right? And so listening to them, I take the nuggets and then I dive a little deeper, see what level of detail they have. And out of that, what I'm really trying to learn is I'm looking for good decision making. If I'm being honest, like none of us are ever going to make the right decision all the time. But what is so important to me, because that's when I can really say this person has it and I trust what they're going to do, is because they have good decision making. Are they using data, facts? How are they bringing in past experience and failures to change their decision making process on the go forward? If they had to do it again, would they make the same decision, and why? Those are the nuggets I'm looking for, because that to me is the most critical thing, in a leader and getting someone in on the team.
Mhm. Although I appreciate the insight, I appreciate the intel, sharing a little bit more about that, and I love that you stressed the importance of decision-making process versus the actual decision that's being made. What are some of the things that they go through? How do they arrive at a particular decision? I think that's very unique. I think that's very interesting insight into be able to understand a particular personality or a person through that very short conversation. So I think that's very interesting. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Well, and I've
Um,
been in, I've been in difficult, kind of triage type situations, or the post-mortem, and have even gone through that myself and said, look, here's why I made the decision I made. And if I'm being honest, I would make it again, because based on what I knew at the time, it was the right decision.
yeah.
Now, know what I know, here's what we'll do about it, right? I just think that's so critical.
Mhm. Right, absolutely. No, I love that example because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, how you made that decision probably more important than the actual decision in
Yep,
itself.
absolutely.
So that's a great example. When we talk about various strategies to attract the top talent, and not only attract but then retain it
Mhm.
to your teams, to your organization, what are some of the things that really help you achieve that, or maybe something that hasn't worked and you learn from that?
Mhm. I find that top talent, they want to work on teams where they're challenged, they get to learn, they get to work, they want to be on a high performing team, right? And they want to have a voice, be respected and appreciated, right? It's kind of a simple, it sounds like a simple formula, but it's hard, to get there. But creating that high performing team is most critical. I want top talent to want to be on our team, to want to be part of it, and to get that, for me, culturally on the team, it's about being candid, transparent, being open to ideas, listening to the team. And that means even creating a culture where, like, my leaders a lot tell me I'm wrong, right? And I try to infuse humor to let them know that that's okay, right? I'll listen, I'll go, so what you're saying is that I was completely wrong about this, right? And that you've, done this work and this is the way we should go. And, we all kind of laugh, but that's right. And that's good. None of us know the answers. And people, if people are afraid to challenge, the lead, or to ask different, ask questions and challenge the thinking, you'll never have that high performing team. And I think that behavior also drives the respect and the voice that they want. And with those behaviors, you're going to have hopefully good outcome. You'll deliver, right? And that's all of those together is what creates that high performing team. And to me, that's how you retain talent. People want to work on teams that win and are doing great things, right? And so to me, that's a big part of retention. In attracting, same, right? Like the best part is to have people come to you, right? Like want to be on your team. But in addition, if they're not, right, interviewing, as we mentioned, they should hear that and see that in your voice and in your examples and in talking to other people on the team. The passion that they have for the work and how they feel about working there as well. To me, that's the way you attract. It should come from you and from your team. There's obvious strategies at scale, right? When we come and represent the company and things we do, but in the end, it boils down, to the one-on-one interview discussions, and they need to see, feel, and hear that from you. And if it's not authentic, top talent candidates see right through that. So you really have to start at yourself and your team and how they're acting and working together.
Just recently, I was talking to an executive at Fortune 10 company, very huge organization, and I asked him, why are you participating in a lot of webinars, live events, podcasts, things like that? And one of the things that he mentioned to me was, it really resonated. It's it's essentially his ability or his that opportunity to really share almost his leadership style or give a glimpse into the type of culture within the team, within the organization, what are the things they value. And he mentioned that there's so many prospective candidates that actually listen to the, these types of talks, and then they bring that to the interview as part of that homework that they have done, which also then gives him a really great indicator of how much they're interested. So I can definitely relate to a lot of the examples that you're talking about, and also the fact that you also appearing, with us as an example, to be able to
Mhm.
share some of those strategies. I think that's very unique, and
Mhm.
it's, you don't see that a lot, especially at the executive
Mhm.
level.
Mhm. I've had similar experiences. People stop me for things I wouldn't even have thought about, where they say, "We saw this on LinkedIn," or "You posted this video." And the reason they get, like, what I'm most interested is when they tell me why they liked it so much.
Yeah.
It's in it. That's where you get the real insights. And I've heard them say, "It looks like you and you're the leadership team, my peers, like you really like each other. You get along." And I'm like, "We do, right?" And so little insights like that are, you start to realize how important that, communicating, how social media can be, but also just the importance, like, of those relationships and how you work and how you show as a team. And it has to be real and authentic, right? And they see that. And then, to my point around they want to come to you, they want to be part of that team too.
Right. Absolutely. You can't fake that.
No. Mm-mm.
Another important topic I want to touch upon is around female leadership, female executive leadership, especially in tech. It's and I, as much as I don't like that label, it's, it does exist. And I have a daughter, and I have a sister, I have a mother, and so forth. My
Mhm.
wife, we talk about that a lot of times. And I know it's very loaded question and it's very high level, but from a standpoint of, and the reason I'm asking is, good deal of our audience are also early stage career professionals, second year
Right.
MBAs, those are entering workforce. And from your standpoint, if you were to highlight a few things that you wish you knew when you were starting your career out, as an advice or recommendation for early stage career professionals, what would that be? Or what would be some of the things to avoid?
Yeah. It's a loaded question, but to your point, it's real. And it's still, I mean, it's something I'm passionate about, women in technology overall. What I would say is, no one's going to tell you what to do. No one's going to tell you what to do next. So take the initiative, ask questions, um, you know, be be curious, right? Get out there and take the lead. Just say, "I want to do this. I'm going to run with it." Show them show them what you can do. Don't be afraid of change, right? I think everyone gets too nervous about things happening maybe in a way that they weren't expecting. When they think about their own kind of future and next steps, that change can lead to great next steps in your career path that you may not have even thought about before. I mean, there's things where I look at, I started off in the utilities industry, as I mentioned, in technology, but ended up in financial services. And coming out of college, I don't think I had not even thought about financial services, and I enjoy it so much. So embracing that change. And the last one to me is, probably the most important, is for the women early in their career: stay on the technical path. Women are very good at some of the less technical roles, like project management and BAs, and often you get pulled to do that or asked to because you are good at it. We are, right? But don't leave the more technical path. Once you do, it's so much harder to get back. And even though it can be challenging at times, I just say stay the course. It will create such a rich career path and rich experiences for you. Just stay on the technical path. Try not to veer off if you can.
Love it, love it, and I appreciate your ability to summarize in very high level response like that, which is very powerful. So thank you for
Mhm.
that. And Tracy, last but not least, a few questions I have is around your personal content diet, as I like to call that. So what do you consume on daily basis when it comes to self-actualization or self-learning? What's in your bookmarks or Twitter profiles that you follow? Share with us, what do you read on daily basis?
Well, as I mentioned, I don't look at a lot of, I try and pull content from the world around me. I should have looked at some Insta, or Twitter things I follow. I didn't even think about that. They would not be as interesting to you, but I read Wired, I get magazines. I have a pile of books next to my bed that I would love to tell you I've read all of them and I haven't. I have some that I try and make time for, but as I mentioned, right now I read mostly about middle school girls and how to deal with that, right? If I'm being candid. But it's that rounded out experience of everything around me. To me, that's like the most that's where we find the disruptors, right? And the influencers is things happening around us, and just looking for how those translate into things that we might need to be thinking about from a financial services perspective. Yeah, so that's really what I do. I do use social media a lot. I'm always on Insta and Twitter, and I'm looking and listening. And when people say things I don't understand, I go down rabbit holes like everybody else and, try and come out. But it's really more of that less traditional content for me.
Yeah. No, that's
Mhm.
awesome. I love that.
Mhm.
And is there a book that stands out, that's something, a book that you always recommend to others, and why is that?
There isn't one because like I said, I have too many. I would tell you just
Right.
this week because I watch and look for them and I buy them. I should
Yeah.
read more. This week, I got a new one from a women's technology group that we're having Peter High come speak to us. He has a new book out called Getting to Nimble, and it's all about digital transformation. So that's the one right next to the bed right now that I'm hoping to pick up this weekend and look at. But yeah, again, I'm more of a student of the world around me and trying to bring all of those insights into my day to day.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense with everything going on and all the information being thrown at us through different mediums. It only makes sense.
Yeah.
Tracy, thank you so much for finding time to talk to us today. Very powerful conversation. I personally learned quite a bit. I'm gonna look forward to staying in touch with you, and perhaps we can do another episode in a year or so and see how much have transpired.
Great. I'd love that. Thank you for having me.